Warhammer 40k has been an ongoing battlefield of ideals for years now between the fans of the property and those tasked with shepherding its continued existence. With every new novel, game, or miniature made, one of the biggest culture-clashing moments in its storied history was when Warhammer seemingly confirmed that female Custodes were a real thing now, and they actually always have been, despite never actually being a thing until the activists began infiltrating the ranks of Warhammer actually. This caused quite a big stir, mostly because the Custodes were always depicted as the ultimate protectors of the Emperor of Mankind. You know, the guy who's kind of important to the overall lore of that universe. And these Custodes were always considered to be the most elite of the Emperor's guardsmen, and they were never depicted, not even once before, as female until, like I said, very recently. Anyway, there's been a lot of debate over this, and I'll get into the Sisters of Battle later and how that new story that's also developing proves these detractors wrong. But let's get into what's now causing the next whirlwind of war within the Warhammer community. So, there's a new book coming out called Ashes of the Imperium. This is the book on screen here. It's a book written by Chris Raitt, who's written other deep dives into the lore surrounding Warhammer in the past. This book is a part of a new multi-series of books from the Black Library, which is Warhammer's publication front, in a series called The Scouring. The Scouring is a new series of books that are exploring the aftermath, if you will, of the Horus Heresy, which was another major event where the Emperor was betrayed by one of his own sons, named Horus of course, and then they waged galactic war on each other. And that era, I guess if you want to label it that, ended with the Emperor mortally wounded, rotting on his throne, so now 10,000 Psychers, which are people with psychic powers, now having to be ritually sacrificed to the Emperor every single day now, just to keep his being alive so that he can keep back the warp, which is basically the realm of chaos and demons and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot, I know. Look, I'm not exactly a Warhammer lore expert myself, I admit that. I know things, but I'm not going to claim that I'm some sort of crazy all-in-one know-it-all. I'm not. But I know enough that female Custodes are pretty stupid and they make zero sense within the setting. It would be like a movie being made about King Leonidas, but now he's a woman and his Spartans are all diverse from all corners of the world. It just kind of feels forced and dumb, really. But this Scouring is also about the Imperium of Man rebuilding itself amidst the betrayal and all of the violence. But this book, which comes out soon, as this video being made anyways, is about the traitor legions which are scattered all over from Terra as they're being hunted by, well, loyalist forces, but both sides are driven by their need for retribution, which of course makes way for more fighting to happen like always, cause well, this is Warhammer, who are we kidding? And there's a new threat on its way that some are worshipping, and basically the Imperium is weakened by what happened before and things couldn't be worse, which is obviously ripe for this sort of storytelling. This now brings us back to female Custodes. So they were originally implemented by Warhammer in the 10th edition Codex, which was in 2024. One of these female custodians that was canonized is Calidus Taravalia Kesh, which is a mouthful of a name. Anyways, this book, which isn't set to release until December 2025, has already leaked physically. This was confirmed by a user on the Black Library Reddit page, as you can see here. They took a photo of their copy and then posted it online to confirm that yes, they have the actual book already. So then, users started asking questions like they always do, and this person said that they're currently on page 170 of the book. One user would then ask about information on the Custodes and their current situation and Valdor, and here's what the person who has this book, and is of course reading it currently, allegedly I should say just to make sure as it reads here. Valdor and most of the remaining Custodes have locked themselves into the throne room and talked to nobody. One of the POV characters, the Ultramarine Chief Librarian, has a brief conversation with the Custodes guarding Guilliman's chambers. When he asks her how the Emperor is doing, her stoic facade cracks for a second, and it shows that she and all of the Custodes are utterly devastated by what has happened to the Emperor. So this one excerpt from the book here that this user again allegedly is reading has caused fans to uproar, so here we go again. They're putting more female Custodes retroactively into the lore, okay? That is pretty much confirmed now. And not just really anywhere, but the Emperor's own personal inner guard, the inner of the most inner guard protecting the Emperor now officially has female Custodes protecting him. I know some people will try to say, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the thing is that the Custodes have always been confirmed to be an all-male faction. After all, this doesn't mean that women don't exist in Warhammer or anything, because yes, they do. The Sisters of Silence, for example, is an all-female division, so too is the Sisters of Battle. While these factions have remained completely their own gender, the opposite has become the case for the Custodes. So why? Because the people who want the change and infiltrate hobbies require that they are represented in every single thing that they consume, and then if they're not, they throw a fit pretty much. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if one day Games Workshop adds maybe a trans person to the Sisters of Battle or Silence or something to really just make this whole thing even more eye-roll worthy. May sound like a joke now, but who are we kidding? That likely canon will happen one day if it hasn't already. And if you want more non-BS content on games and media, consider liking the video, subscribing, leaving a comment. Thank you very much. One user would reply to the guy who has the book that confirmed that yes, female Custodes now do exist for sure in this post-Horus Heresy world, with this as they say. Her, with a bunch of exclamations, LOL, I am just interested that they kept the whole women Custode thing. Some other people were confused, however, in the Reddit conversation about female Custodes, so this one user would clear it up by saying this. You haven't seen any female Custodes in previous novels is because they weren't a thing until 10th edition. They're a retcon, and whoever this one is, she's the very first to appear in a proper novel. And if this is an anatheme Psychana, she just broke her eternal vow of silence since Astartes do not understand Thoughtmark. A little lore context for those who don't know what an anathema Psychana is, it's another name for the faction called the Sisters of Silence. If you don't know who they are, basically, they're an anti-psychic order of warriors. So the Sisters of Silence are made up of warrior women who have a unique gene in their DNA which makes them get referred to as blanks. So psychers are people who are in tune with the warp. That's the realm of chaos in the Warhammer world. Think of them like mages pretty much in your typical fantasy setting, and the warp is like the well of magic that they pull from via their ability to tap into that realm, I guess. So the blanks are like the opposite of that, basically. Their mutant gene actually emits a sort of anti-magic, or I guess anti-warp field, if that makes more sense for you. So this means that these blank-aligned warriors are not very susceptible to psychic attacks like other people are, which is, yeah, very handy when you're fighting literal chaos demons and whatnot that are, trying to prey on everyone's minds and whatnot all the time. So what that user is saying, basically, is if this so-called custody or woman in general is in any way tied to any one of these sorts of things, it's kind of a big no-no in the lore. That was a bit to explain, but hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I'm trying my best here. But this inclusion now of the first actual female custody within a real Warhammer book has caused, well, ruckus. Of course, people wanted more information, so the user who's reading this book early specifically stated, as seen here, that, yeah, I'm very sure she is explicitly called a Custodes, and the Ultramarine describes her as a gigantus in golden armor. So that's confirmed by this user that this new book, Ashes of the Imperium, 100% includes and retcons the lore of Warhammer 40k and has literal female Custodes operating within the vicinity of the Emperor's corpse that is again still alive because he's the most powerful psyker that's ever lived, pretty much. This, if you're not into Warhammer, well, it's kind of sacrilegious. It's kind of the sort of thing that now confirms people are really going to get mad at again, because there's really no need to do this for seemingly any other reason than we want more representation so that those kinds of people don't eat us alive. And before anyone thinks this user who's reading this book is somehow lying or doing this to rile people up because they hate female Custodes, it's the exact opposite, actually. As seen here, the original poster of this Reddit thread says themselves that they are actually totally for female Custodes and thinks that anyone who isn't is a bigot. So the fact that they openly admitted in the book that they're reading of this means that they didn't mean it to, upset people, but they actually are celebrating it instead. So yeah, love that, even though I don't. So why does this all matter? Well, it's simple. It's because companies cannot and will not allow male fans to have anything anymore because they don't value their dedication to these franchises. The end game goal of a lot of this is that these companies, not just Games Workshop, but others too, they want to replace the old guard audience with a new modernized one. Obviously, as you're likely aware, this has been disastrous practically anywhere that it's been implemented so far. You can take Star Wars or Marvel as great examples, which have been decimated decimating their goodwill for years now. According to Nerdrotic, a mutual of the channel, as seen here from geeksandgamers.com, Nerdrotic claims that his sources even told him that characters like Ironheart or She-Hulk and Wiccan are nowhere to be seen in the first trailer for Avengers Doomsday. Now I know this is a Warhammer video, but I'm bringing this up because this proves what I've been saying as on like a much larger scale. That people are just kind of sick of these sorts of characters that are being forced into, well, literally everything. And it does always feel forced. You can't say that fans are bigoted, however, because Warhammer fans especially have actually been very open to more female characters. But they, like other fandoms, are also big on something called canon, which I think we all know what that means. The truth is that Warhammer has always had women in their lore. But the truth is also that those women were never Custodes because they had their own factions. The fact that these factions can't be respected to keep themselves what they originally were meant to be like they used to be is why there is so much pushback. Nobody wants male Sisters of Battle, or I guess Silence even, because those factions were always women, and there's nothing wrong with that. So then why is it so wrong to want the Custodes to be male only? Or say the Space Marines, or the Ultramarines, I guess too, or whichever other ones you want to say. Why is it always problematic in that one direction? The answer is simple. It's activism. But let me prove my point, because there's a new Warhammer game coming out soon, a sequel to Bolt Gun. As you're seeing on screen here, this is Bolt Gun 2. But interestingly so, this trailer also confirms that you can now play as a Sister of Battle in this game, which is what's happening in this very trailer you're seeing. Yet you may be noticing, where's the backlash? Why aren't people up in arms about this? You get to play as a girl in this game, in a Warhammer game even? Why aren't they angry about it? Why aren't they boycotting it or being the angry chuds like they usually are? But oh right, because Warhammer fans are not actually as bigoted or whatever these types try to claim they are to be. In actuality, from the comments on that trailer alone, people are really excited to play as a Sister of Battle. It's almost as if you are able to have authentic female representation in your Warhammer media as long as it respects the traditions that are laid down by that very franchise itself in the past. No one has an issue with women in Warhammer. You just got to adhere to the lore. It could all be so simple. Playing as a Sister of Battle is cool, but we don't want female Space Marines, or Custodes even, because again, they were never female to begin with. This is what I hate about companies, is that they don't understand the difference or the nuance that's at play here. Why can't you just make something new in that franchise that doesn't spit on the traditions and decades of lore if you want these new things? Why do you have to take what already exists and works and then warp it to meet your needs? The only reason that I can think of is a genuine lack of creativity, a fear that if we don't attach this change that we want to something that is already established, then it won't work. It won't be successful. But in actuality, by attaching the thing you want to work to something it doesn't work with, still ends up with the result that you wouldn't want in the end anyways, like the female Custodes situation. It's like when they gender swap something else, just make a new thing. We don't want a female James Bond. You can have a female spy, I guess, but she doesn't need to be a gender-bent version of that same character whose name is like Jane Bond or something else. Like, what it tells me is that these companies and more, they seem to just lack the innovation or maybe the creative foresight to make new things that could rival or stand shoulder to shoulder with what already works before. Instead, they'd rather just take the easy way out and push the change on the things that don't really need it. But then all you end up doing is alienating that fan base and turning what you had into slop pretty much. It makes your Warhammer lore just kind of look stupid now that suddenly magically there's female Custodes. Because now anything you wrote before or made that had them makes zero sense now with this added context. Where were the female Custodes before? Oh, they're conveniently those random Custodes, I guess, in the back in all these images where their helmets are on or something else, I guess. So what then? The male and the female Custodes are now the same size in every way too, so then what's the point then? Just to say that they're women? You realize how boring that sounds? It's the same thing with Witcher and Dragon Age. Notice how when you played Witcher 3, everyone was white in that game? But it was that way because the games and books were based on a Polish guy's world that he created, and he then obviously was born in Eastern Europe where everyone was white because that's how demographics worked, especially back then. Yet if you go look at the Witcher TV show, that everyone is suddenly, makes no zero sense anymore. Like characters that are white in the books or the games, and now the Witcher games take place after the books, by the way, are now magically a different skin color in the TV shows and all that, but then they magically will then turn back to being white again in the games and whatever else that follow anyways. It's confusing, it's bizarre and weird, and let's be real, it's just forced even. And I think forcing things to work is never really the way to go, It's sort of like a relationship. It doesn't work if you gotta make yourself make it work, I guess. Or like going to the bathroom. If you gotta force it, it's probably crap. But it is definitely disrespectful to add things like this, considering in the maybe 60 plus books and then some that have had some form of Custodes present in them, then none of these books have ever once claimed that they were anything but an all-male faction. Which means that this retcon is for one simple reason: representation. Now, I'm not saying that Games Workshop is performing poorly as a company, that's far from it. But this mostly comes down to the fact that they have smartfully not went ahead and ruined the more profitable parts of their business, like Space Marines, of course. As seen here from IGN, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 sold a whopping 7 million copies in about a year's time. It actually sold 4.5 million copies in just its debut month. This game was a massive success for Games Workshop. And if you've played Space Marine 2, you know why. Because it's just about dudes fighting aliens and them chanting about brotherhood. Wow, so simple. And it made hundreds of millions of dollars in cash already. IGN would then report in a separate article, which was also about Space Marine 2, that as seen here, that 98% of their total licensing revenue came specifically from games like Space Marine 2, which brought in, again, like I said, millions in profit. And Space Marine 3 is already in active development, which makes total sense given how successful the second game already was. And this is what I mean. I wouldn't have a problem if they added Sisters of Battle as playable characters in some other game even. But the key here is to differ them from their Space Marine brothers. These guys are men. They always will be. And I would love to play as Custodes too in a game, but if they're women, then it just feels inauthentic. You can call me whatever you want. I just think things should respect the lore is all I'm trying to say. If you want people to get invested into your franchise, you have to meet them halfway. And when you do respect them, you sell 7 million copies and you make enough money to fund your next game absolutely no problem. And it was also more confusing too, since in the Ultimate Guide to 40k, which was this book on screen here that came out in late December 2024, Games Workshop used male-gendered language to explain the Custodes in that guidebook, which made people believe that, oh wow, they actually erased female Custodes. But now with this new book especially, that doesn't really seem to be the case, but it is disingenuous to have a book that is literally titled The Ultimate Guide, only for it to technically have, well, misinformation in it. Either way, Games Workshop is healthy as a company because their core franchise pillars are very, very strong. And besides, it's clear there's a hunger for more male-oriented series still. Just go look at Space King from Flash Kits. Their series is an excellent Warhammer parody that features all the staples of what fans of Warhammer are looking for, just in a far more comedic tone. And I think it's important that such series exist and continue to do so independently because people support these sorts of things because they love it. Because they just want fun entertainment that doesn't spit on them or talk down to them 24/7, which is a great thing to see. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Space King, you should. My favorite character in that series is Hate Monger. I'll let you figure that out once you watch it because he's awesome. And they got plenty of meta jokes that will make you laugh if you know really anything about Warhammer. They literally blow up an entire planet at one point because some guy makes basically a female custody. So again, if you haven't, checked out Space King, you should probably go do that right now because it's extra funny too because the group that you follow in that show, which is Captain, Hatemonger, Bryce, and Chestnut, are also technically children but juiced up. I promise you it'll make more sense once you watch it, but it's so great. I also am not using much footage of the show here in this video. One, to not spoil it for you, but two, because, well, copyright obviously, but seriously, go check out Space King. Boobies. As long as Space Marines exist, yeah, they're gonna keep making the money. As for that book, The Ashes of the Imperium, besides what that user said, we don't have more to go on as in what's happening in the plot really anyways yet, but it is 100% confirmed according to them that female Custodes are now real, and they are here to stay. So I guess I should ask you, what do you think about all of this? Do you think it's a good change, or is it a non-issue to you? Would you be more open to female versions of other characters, or I guess factions, or should lore be cemented in stone from the beginning, and then respected until the sun inevitably blows up and we all turn into space dust? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching as always, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.